that when you are going up hill, you are increasing. So when they ask why it's f at x, why it's f at x increasing, just know that f at x is increasing if f at x is increasing if x is greater or equals to -1. You understand? Because from this point going that side, f at x is increasing. From this point going that side, f at x is increasing, and f at x will be decreasing. F at x will be decreasing if x is less than or equals to -1. Do you understand how I answered this question? Because where is this thing decreasing? It will be decreasing from this point. Let me quickly show you. It is decreasing from this point going up. Why? Because if you always walk from left to right, you are always walking in that direction. So the moment you start going this side, you are going down. So this is a decreasing. So now another thing that I want to add on this information is that whenever you are decreasing, just know that the gradient is negative. So the gradient of this graph here is negative this side. But once it starts reaching this point, it starts to become positive. The gradient is positive. You understand? When you are increasing, yes, the gradient is positive, and when you are decreasing, the gradient is negative. Okay, that is the information I wanted to share with you on a parabola. Right, we're just going to take one example of a parabola, then I'm going to mix it with what? I'm going to mix it with I'm going to take one example, then I'm going to mix it with okay, let's start with this one. Okay, let me try to open a blank page. Okay, let's start with this example. Let's say I have an equation in this form. Okay, so let's say I have an equation like this. Y is equals to x squared minus 5x plus 6. So can you see that this graph is in standard form? The equation of this graph is in standard form.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the first question that they'll ask you in an exam is to calculate. They will want you to calculate the x-intercept. Okay, let's say the intercept, the coordinates of the intercept. So to calculate the x-intercept, we're going to start with the x-intercept, and to find the x-intercept, we're going to let what? We're going to let y to be equal to 0. So from this equation, where there's y, I'm going to substitute that as 0. Where there's y, we're going to put what? Where there's y, we just put 0. So I'm going to say this will be 0 is equals to x squared minus 5x plus 6, which can also be written as x squared minus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. Then now I can factorize this. So to factorize this, I'll have x and x. I need you to listen to me. How am I going to do the factorizing part? I'm going to look for two numbers. Remember, we're going to focus on what? On the value of c. I'm going to look for two numbers that when I multiply them, they give me 6. When I add or subtract them, they give me the middle term of 5. So basically, I'm looking for the factors of 6. So I'm going to write down the factors of 6, which is 1, right? The factors of 6 is 1. We have 6. We have 2. Maybe we should write them in ascending. Okay, it's 1, 2, 3, and 6. 1 times 6 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. So these are the factors. You understand?
Yes, sir.
So these are the factors of 6. So on these factors, I need to choose the factor that when I add or subtract them, they will give me what? They will give me 6. And when I multiply them, when I add or subtract them, they'll give me -5. Right. But remember that I can't use 1 and 6, because if I use 1 and 6, this guy is positive. This tells me that both of them should be negative, and when I add those two numbers, I'll get -7. So I need the two factors that when I add or subtract them, they give me -5. So for the fact that the middle term is it's a negative, this tells you that on these factors, look for the number that is big. I'm going to start with 3. The smaller number, 2, and then which will be negative, then -3, which will also be negative. These things will give us -5. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
And now I know that 2 times 3 is 6. So this tells me that this guy should be negative. This side, the -2 should be negative. Also, the -3 should be negative. And this is equal to 0. So now what we can do, we can add this thing. This is the zero product property. When we talk about the zero product property, it says that if I have A multiplied by B, it's equal to 0. Therefore, I can conclude and say A is equal to 0 or B is equal to 0. So this is the zero product property. I'm going to use the zero product property. Equate everything that is on the brackets to 0 and solve for x. Therefore, the value of x is 2 or the value of x is 3. Right. So the x-intercept will be what? The x-intercept will be, we know that the x-intercept will be 2 and 0. On the other side will be 3 and 0. Are you with me on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now another thing, we need to find the y-intercept. We need to find the y-intercept. We need to find the y-intercept. We let x to be equal to 0. So where there's x, we put 0 on the equation. So y is equal to, where there's x, I'm going to put 0 plus 6. So we can see that the y is 6. So this will be 0 and 6. Remember, we said that the y-intercept is 0 and the value of c. And the value of c is 6. We just say 0 and 6, but show all these workings. Are you happy with how to find the intercept?
Yes, sir.
Right, I'm happy. I'm happy that you are happy. Now, let's focus on the domain part. We're just going to revise some of the domain before we can continue. Okay, with some of the concept. Let's see if you understand the domain and the range. Let's say that I have a graph like this. Right. So the graph looks like this, and I have the turning point of the graph as what? As 2 and -2. Can you please tell me what is the domain of this graph, and also tell me what is the range of this graph?
Okay. I think that the range I'm gonna write y is. So I don't know how to call this size. That's the problem.
Okay, so remember we said on the range we check what? We check the y, which is this is in the form of p is to q, right?
Yes.
So now to find the range, we said y must be greater or equals to that y coordinate, which is -2.
Yes. So the thing, well, my only problem is that I don't know how to call those the greater than, less than.
Oh, okay. When it's like but,
yes.
Can you write it down, right?
sir.
Okay, so when it's like this, y is greater or equal to minus 2. So now let's discuss this thing further now. When it's like this, because now this is maths, you must make sure that you understand everything on maths. So this is maths. When I write it like this, we call this thing the inequality notation. So we call this thing the inequality. We call it the inequality notation. So sometimes you might be required to write this thing as an interval notation. As an interval notation. Right. So if you write it as an interval notation, you're going to write it like this. You're going to say y must be an element of, you start with the small number. Remember we say y must be greater than minus 2. So it goes all the way to positive infinity. But the smaller one is what is negative 2. All the way to positive infinity, which is not included. That's how you do this. So now, this is a point at y is equal to minus 2. So we use what? We use a square bracket. Right. We use a square bracket. Why do we use a square bracket? Do you know why are we using a square bracket?
No, sir.
Okay. So, but now I think you can see the difference between a square bracket and this open one, the open bracket, a small one. The small, okay. So the square bracket, it indicates that this value, the negative 2, is included in the notation. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Right. It indicates, this indicates that this value, the value is included in the solution. When we say included, why is it included? Because we said y must be greater or equals to negative 2. There's a difference between y is greater than negative 2 and y is greater or equal to negative 2. This one, it must not be equal to 2, but not equal to negative 2, but what? But greater than negative 2. Then on this one, y must be greater than or equal to negative 2. So sometimes you can maybe, if let's say you want to draw it on a number line, you just put it like this. This is negative 2. You do a closed circle, then you point in that direction. So when you see it like this, then if you do it like this and say this is negative 2, an open bracket, and go that side, this is for y is greater than negative 2, and this is for y is greater or equal to negative 2. Are you with me on that?
Yes, sir.
So now we have the inequality notation. So for now, to make this simple, let's stick to the inequality notation for now. Then if in an exam they want you to write it in an interval notation, then this is how you should write your domain. I mean your range. So your domain, remember we talked about the domain of this function. We said the domain doesn't change. We can say that x, for the domain, it takes all the x values. So x must be an element of real numbers. It takes all the x values, or you can write it in what? Remember, this is an interval notation. You can say x, it's an element of what? An element of from negative infinity to what? To positive infinity. Are you with me on that?
Yes, sir.
So when you write it like that, sometimes you can write it as an interval notation and say x must be less than infinity and x must be greater than negative infinity. But to make this simple, let's stick to that. Are you happy with how we did this question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want us to work on few questions. We'll see if we still have enough time to do the what is this? To do some of the hyperbola.